Welcome everyone to the AFRI Benry webinar for new investigators. We're very pleased that you're here. The assumption is that you in the audience are either new investigators or possibly mentors for new investigators, or whether it's formal or informal. Nevertheless, we welcome you, and we truly hope this is of value to you. So my name is Timothy Connor. I'm one of the division directors here at NIFA, also serving as interim deputy director for NIFA as well, with overall oversight for Institute of Bioenergy, Climate, and Environment, which is the primary houser for the Benry program. Also, there are cross-functional programs which you hear about as well in today's webinar. So in your virtual boxes and orchestrating the webinar are several other supporters and team members, program specialists that you may not hear from, but are very key to making sure that this webinar goes off smoothly. They are Ms. Susan Muhudin, Ms. Hannah Moshe, Dr. Amber Campbell, Dr. Rodney Vance. But we also have other experienced staff on board as well that are experts in terms of the AFRI program overall. So today, we have a lineup of national program leaders who will walk you through many of the programs we want to highlight. And for those of you that are interested in the Benry program, but also, we also have, as I said before, a number of related cross-functional programs that may be of interest to you. They may align with your current interest. They may possibly be, if not interesting to you now, maybe future possibilities for you once you pass your new investigator status. So they will all introduce themselves and their program affiliation as they appear. So today, think about this as sort of an overview, but you had your new investigator overview on Monday for those of you that were able to attend. Today's sort of a programmatic overview. And I'd like you to think about this as, I'm going to give you maybe 100,000 foot sort of layout of what the program is today. And then the national program leaders will join and give you maybe a 20 or 30,000 square foot, 20 or 30,000 foot introduction to the program. And then it's really up to you to go in and get that 1,000-foot level view. And that's really done by reading the RFA, really digging into it. And I think that's where you get most of your information and questions, or at least know what questions you want to ask in more detail at a later time. So look at this session as more or less a navigation tool to allow you to get to better understanding of the RFA. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a series of presentations, and then we're going to follow it with a Q&A. Regarding the Q&A, there are two options. You'll be able to ask live questions by coming off mute, or you can raise your hand, or you can also submit your questions in the Q&A box in real time. So go ahead and feel free when you have questions to just drop your questions in that Q&A box, and then we'll see what we can address online. But if not, we'll be sure to try to capture it for later discussion. We wish this could be more interactive, but as you know, these are difficult times. And however, we will do our best to make it as interactive as possible and to address your questions. So again, welcome to one and welcome to all. So the next slide, it's really just a brief sort of reminder, again, the 100,000 foot view onto what Benry is. Benry really is a program designed to address sustainable long-term production of agriculture, goods, services, products, approaches to solving those types of natural resource issues, constraints, and problems. And so we do it primarily by supporting foundational and applied research, hence why most of the AFRI Benry program that you'll see here today, well, all of it will be in the Foundational and Applied Sciences RFA. We expect that to be out shortly. And so the idea really here is to promote, improve, and maintain healthy agroecosystems and natural resources. So that's really the foundation of the program. We have roughly about $33 million for the program for each cycle. And each cycle, as you know, is yearly, with the new one becoming shortly after the RFA is published. So next slide. Okay, so just generally the rundown, we're gonna have Jim Doborowski, who's the National Program Leader for Soil Health and Water Quality and Quality Programs. We're gonna then have Daniel Cassidy to talk a little bit about the sustainable bioeconomy through bio-based products. And then finally, we're gonna have Megan O'Rourke to come in and give you sort of the priority highlights for sustainable agroecosystems, health functions, processes, and management. So that's the first part of it. Next slide. And then after that, we're going to open this up a little bit and talk about those cross-functional areas. You know, NIFA does function pretty much as a cross-disciplinary organization. And so I think you'll get a good look at this. And this will give you some idea of what other possibilities are, maybe things you haven't thought about directly, but obviously things that may touch you on your nerve and make you excited about being interested in it. So we're going to start off with A1402, which is agriculture microbiomes, land and Litchens Park. And then for data science for foods and systems, we're going to have Ann Stapleton give you an overview of that. Then we're going to jump back to Jim Doborowski, who's going to talk a little bit about the CARE program. And then we're going to close this part of the cross-cutting programs with Andres Sibils, who's going to do interdisciplinary engagement in animal systems, which we basically call IDEAs. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so Jim, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks very much, Tim. Welcome to the webinar this afternoon, folks. We're going to begin today with soil health. It is one of the programs in BNRI. It is Program Area Priority Code A1401. The proposed budget request is not to exceed $750,000 total per project, including indirect funds for project periods of 3 to 4 years. We are asking for research projects only. The grant types are standard conference and the phase suite, strengthening standard new investigators, strengthening conference, seed, equipment, and sabbatical grants. The application deadline is June 10th, 2021, 5 p.m. Eastern time. And there's my contact information down at the bottom. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk a bit about the soil health funding priorities. We're really looking for basic and applied research that will lead to the development of tools, practices, techniques, and/or innovations for improving soil health and the resilience and sustainability of ag production systems and ecosystem services. So specifically, we're looking for projects that are foundational and applied research to advance scientific understanding of soil physical and biogeochemical processes and interactions. We're looking for the assessment, development, and adoption of models, decision support tools, and new management or conservation practices and/or processes that will lead to improving or maintaining soil health and the productivity of the soil while maintaining or improving both environmental health and the sustainability of our natural resource base. And we're looking for a focus on the interactions between the social and human dimensions associated with soil health with environmental and economic dimensions. Those are encouraged. The proposed projects that are primarily fundamental science must explain how a better understanding of the fundamental processes will lead to strategies to improve overall soil health and the resilience and sustainability of both agriculture and ecosystem services. Next slide. So I'm also going to talk to you this afternoon about the Water Quantity and Quality Program, or what we call Water Q&Q. The program area priority code for that is A1411. The proposed budget request is again $750K per project, including indirect costs for periods of 3 to 4 years. The project types, again, are research projects only. Grant types are the same, standard conference and phase, and the phase suite, including strengthening standard, new investigator, strengthening conference, seed, equipment, and sabbatical. The deadline for applications is June 10th, 2021. Again, 5 p.m. Eastern time, right on the dot. And my information is down at the bottom. Next slide. Okay, for the Water Q&Q program, the funding priorities, we're really looking to reduce the freshwater demand, both from groundwater and surface water sources for irrigation and the nutrient demand for maximum crop production. We're looking for projects that are focused on the reduction of the use of fresh water and to improve agricultural resilience, sustainability by innovative approaches, tools, and technologies. We're also looking for projects that are focused on the evaluation of the physical and biogeochemical interactions, fluxes, fate and transport, transformation and storage of single or multiple nutrients, pathogens, or chemicals of environmental concern of a variety of source waters as it relates to agroecosystem productivity, and also on the associated natural resources and the environment. We're also looking for projects that are mitigating soil salinity from the use of lower quality water sources, like recycled water, for example, in agriculture. Other projects we're looking for are focused on the conservation of surface and groundwater quantity through the research of agroecosystems, and finally, the mitigation and/or measurement of soil erodibility and erosion to sustain agroecosystems. Thanks very much. Next slide.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name's Dr. Daniel Cassidy. I am managing the sustainable bioeconomy through bio-based products. This is program area A1414. We're asking for projects up to $1 million for a period of 4 years. These are integrated projects, which means they require research and then an E or E, education or extension. The grant types are standard, conference, FACE, as Jim has gone through. Application deadline is June 10th, 2021. And as he said, there is a hard 5 p.m. Eastern timeline deadline. And I would be your primary contact, even though I go by Daniel. My email address is patrick.cassidy@usda.gov, or you can contact Jim. Next slide, please. Thank you. The funding priorities, we're really looking at the development of bio-based products that can complement current agricultural production systems. Really looking at creating opportunities for overall system profitability and productivity, making more rural jobs. These are new and improved strategies to develop bio-based products, to increase functionality, to increase potential revenues and reduce cost over the current incumbent products. Our strategies are for scalable biomass systems. So we're talking about things that could be done at a much smaller scale than what you would think of by building a large infrastructure inside a rural or inside an urban community. We're looking at more rural. We're looking at life cycle emissions, nutrient use reduction, wildlife and pollinator habitat enhancements are very, very much something we're looking at. And really we're looking at alleviating technical and economic barriers to adoption. How do we get the common Joe, John, and Jane to adopt bio-based products into their lives?
Good afternoon. My name is Megan O'Rourke, and I'm a new national program leader. I joined up with NIFA in June. So I'm going to go through my program here, which is the Sustainable Agroecosystems, Health Functions, Processes, and Management. This is code A1451, and this funds projects up to $650,000 for periods of 3 to 4 years. The project type is research only. And the grant types include, as we've talked about before, standard, conference, and phase. The application deadline this year is June 17th. And I'm the primary contact for this program. And additionally, you can contact Dr. Jim Dobrowski. Next slide, please. So the priority here is we are focusing on improvements of ecosystem health and productivity in managed systems. And so you can apply if you're working in croplands, forests, grasslands, and rangelands, all of those systems, it's all inclusive for this program. And these systems that would be currently under stress and at risk from variable climates, pests, pathogens, invasive plants, and increased environmental pressures. And then specifically, we're looking at for connection of ecosystem health to production system functionality, productivity, socioeconomic viability, sustainability, biodiversity, and the production of other ecosystem services. And then another focus area would be developing new approaches that significantly increase ecosystem health and resilience along with the output or value of more than one ecosystem service. And then comparing this new production system compared with the current management system for the region. Next slide.
Okay, so with that, we're going to transition to the cross-cutting projects and programs. So Jim, I guess you're up first.
I am, thanks Tim. Now we're going to talk about the first cross-cutting program, Critical Agricultural Research and Extension, called CARE. It's easy to remember. Program area primary code for this one is A1701. The proposed budget request is $300,000 total per project for project periods of 1 to 3 years. The difference is project type. So this is an integrated project, and it's integrated across research and extension. And those are the projects, the only projects that we're accepting. The grant types are standard and phase. And in the phase, we're only accepting strengthening standard and new investigator grants. And that's it. The application deadline is June 17th, 2021, again at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And I have two partners that are working with me on the Critical Ag and Research and Extension program, Dr. Vijay Nandula and Dr. Andres Sibbles. And both of those, along with my contact information, is at the bottom. Next slide. Okay, so CARE, the funding priorities for CARE are, we're really looking for critical challenges and opportunities that research and extension together can address and improve our nation's agriculture and food systems. We're looking to fund projects where there are integrated activities based on rigorous research combined with effective extension. So in CARE, we're really looking for research that is not basic research or discovery research. It's research that's applied, that's right at the cusp of being able to be translated and delivered to end users. We're also looking for the involvement of stakeholders to develop and rapidly apply this new knowledge or practices. We also would like the work to contribute to improved well-being of the people, communities, plants, and animals involved in and affected by agriculture and food production systems. Next slide.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ann Stapleton, and I'm going to talk about a cross-cutting program. So these cross-cutting programs cover multiple mission areas of AFRI. This one is Data Science for Food and Agricultural Systems, DSFAS, priority code A1541. The same priority code was used for a prior program with a different name, FACT. So our proposed budget request is, as you've seen before, $650,000 for standard grants for 3 to 5 years. We have a special category called Coordination Innovation Networks. For that priority, the budget is higher for $1 million for up to 5 years. Project types for DSFAS are research projects or integrated projects only, Grant types include the full range in AFRI, standard, conference, and remember conference have different budget limits across AFRI and phase. Grant types for coordination networks are different. That's standard and phase, strengthening standard grants only. There's a bunch of additional detail about coordination networks in the RFA. The application deadline is July 29th. And I'm the lead NPL on this, and I have many colleagues who contribute. So we have a single email that goes to the right person to answer your question. So please go ahead and write to the email address given there or to my personal email, and I can send it to that address. Then the correct person will be able to answer your question. Next slide, please. So this is cross-cutting, and the funding priorities are data science that enables systems and communities to effectively utilize data, improve resource management, and integrate new technologies and approaches to further U.S. food and agriculture. This is any area of food and agriculture. Now, this is a question I get often. The most competitive proposals here will be equally well-grounded in agricultural science and data science broadly defined, data science, AI, et cetera. So there should be strengths in both. I thought I'd mention the sort of general priority areas under each of these three that are listed here as bullet points. There's additional information in the RFA that you should definitely look at. This is analysis of agricultural data, connecting multi-scale, multi-domain, and multi-format ag data, agricultural applications, and human technology data interactions. And each of these has additional explanations in the RFA as to what priorities we have in these areas. So please do see more information. And also there is additional information in the RFA about special emphasis projects that apply artificial intelligence and machine learning. So there's special instructions for that category of proposal. And there's also a good deal of specific information about coordinated innovation networks projects. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you. Next slide.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Ann Lichens-Park, and I'm going to tell you about another cross-cutting program, which is the Agricultural Microbiomes in Plant Systems and Natural Resources program. The program area priority code is A1402, and proposed budgets are not to exceed $850,000 total per project. This program supports research projects only, and it supports standard, conference, and phase proposals. The application deadline is July 15th, 2021, and it's also the 5 p.m. Eastern time, as with the other programs. That's my contact information here. And before I move on to the next slide, I just want to tell you a little bit about this program. It aims to support research leading to a better understanding of microbial communities associated with plants. And it is expected that the knowledge gained through the projects funded in this program will help reduce the use of chemicals in food production, lead to the development of safer alternatives for the management of pests and diseases, optimize nutrient utilization efficiency, and reduce the environmental footprint of agriculture and food systems. It's important to note that this program does not support research on microbiomes associated with animals, with the possible exception of insect vectors of disease. It also does not support studies of interactions between single microbial species and a plant host. So now we can move on to the next slide. So this program does support projects that lead to better understanding of the interactions among the host, the environment, and the microbiome. And this understanding these interactions is critical for improving the sustainability of agricultural productivity and quality in plant systems, associated natural resources, human nutrition, and health. So there are 3 program area priorities, and applications submitted to this cross-cutting program must fall within one of these, or they could fall within more than one of these. So the first program area priority is characterize molecular mechanisms and signal exchange involved in microbiome assembly and interactions in various environments or physiological states, such as stress, diseases, or growth stages. The second program area priority is functionally characterizing microbiomes and microbiome metabolites in conferring specific host phenotypes, such as disease resistance or drought tolerance, optimization of environmental processes, such as water uptake, nutrient cycling, or carbon sequestration, and/or host microbiome interactions, such as host influences on microbiome composition. The third program area priority is define genomic elements that shape functional diversity, virulence, and resistance to sanitation and/or antimicrobial treatment of foodborne pathogens associated with plant foods. So you should note the emphasis on microbiome function in all of these priority areas. That's an important aspect of applications that are appropriate for this program. And that's the end for me. So the next speaker.
Hi, good afternoon. I am Andres Sibbelt, and I am new to NIFA. I've been with NIFA for a month. I am a national program lead in the Division of Animal Systems, and I'm going to try to briefly describe this other cross-cutting program that we call IDEAS, or Interdisciplinary Engagement in Animal Systems. So the program code for this one is A1261, and it funds projects for up to $1 million for 3 to 5 years. And the project types need to be integrated, meaning that they include research and extension or education. And the grant types that are entertained by this program are standard, conference, and phase, and all of these different types of phase grants. The application deadline for this program is July 15th, 2021 at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And contact staff for IDEAS are Dr. Steve Smith, Ganesh Bora, or myself. And you'll notice that these names are slightly different to what appears on the RFA right now. I think an updated version of the RFA will be published soon, and these our names and contacts will be on there as well. So next slide, please. What the IDEAS program intends to do is to bridge the traditional disciplinary divides to address complex issues in animal agriculture. And so the funding priorities or emphasis areas are 3. The first is precision animal management, and that includes all that is listed there: precision feeding, breeding, management, and animal health. The second emphasis area is environmental synergies of animal production. So managing emissions, recycling, reusing co-products of animal agriculture, and optimizing animal management for environmental health. And the third is emphasis areas, societal aspects of animal welfare. And so this one is, this priority is aimed at building trust around animal agriculture, consumer experiences that influence perceptions of animal well-being, and public engagement in the policy and practices of animal agriculture as well. So we would encourage you to check out the RFA and the details in the RFA, but don't hesitate to contact us if you have questions. So thank you, Tim. That's all on my part.
Okay, thank you. So let's go ahead and round out a few more programs for your information. A lot of these may be not immediately obvious to some of you that may have more of a natural resources focus, but collaborations and other things sometimes make strange bedfellows. So the first one here is A1102, which is Foundational Knowledge of Agricultural Production Systems. It's primarily ag productions, but it also has some very interesting and often sometimes quite broad applications as well. The second one is pollinator health, which I think you've heard mentioned a little bit before in terms of that being one of the benefits or ag ecosystem services that often is provided. Well, here's a separate program on that. A1112, pests and beneficial species. And then in the bucket of education, training, and workforce development from the AFRI side, there are the pre-doctoral and the postdoctoral fellowships. So we encourage you to also look at those programs to see if they match your interests or match potential future collaborations for you. Next slide, please. Now, what about the non-AFRI programs? So these are some that we sort of grouped together that we thought also may be ones that we'd really like for you to look at. The RFAs for these are in different stages. So unlike the AFRI RFAs, which have been published, and you can look forward to maybe updates coming a little later, these particular ones are in various stages. The first one is RREA. It has a sort of a foundation which also gives a lot of credence to natural resource interest. Equipment grants is somewhat more sort of broad in the sense of equipment of all types and sizes, but it does have a maximum limit as well. SCRI, Specialty Crops Research Initiative, also can have a pretty broad sort of research focus. And then there are the two organic programs, Organic Transitions, a little bit more applied, moving you toward organic, and Organic Research and Extension Initiative. And then the SARE program actually is one that you really should look at because of its sort of emphasis as well in soil and water and those media. I would say there's one more that isn't here for those of you that may be interested in more of a bioenergy, bioeconomy type focus, and that would be the SUN grant. But in that case, the SUN grant, you should be looking at maybe your region or universities that host that program, and then check for those possibilities for applying to that program. And you can just look that up also on the NIFA website, but there's also a SUN grant site you can look at. And on the other side, if you wear a hat that has a little bit more of a business focus to it, or you're able to take sabbatical for some short period of time, and you are somehow able to affiliate yourself with 51% of a business unit, then you may also find interest and eligibility for the Small Business Innovation Research Program. So those are sort of some of the things. And if you look at SBR specifically, we've sort of highlighted the ones that may be relevant to those of you that have a BENRI type of interest. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we're going to turn this over to, I believe, Megan. I think you want to take the microphone from here.
Sure. So we also want to really share with you, I've seen some questions pop up about how do we research past programs to understand how you fit in the historical scope of a program. So we want to just make sure that everybody's aware of this Nifidata Gateway application. It allows you to fund search funded projects by keyword, program codes, project directors. You can get access to reports, which include non-technical summaries of funded projects, their goals and objectives, and methods. And you can find funding opportunities by area of interest and potential future collaborators through this list. Next slide. So this is a screenshot. If you just Google Nifidata Gateway, you'll come to here. And the tricky thing is, this arrow is a little bit off, but there's a search bar in the right-hand side of the screen. Just simply hit search, and that's going to bring you to the next slide, which is a more complex database interface. And so on this page, you will have many options in which to search. You can search for the project details, keyword search, Under the advanced search tab, for example, we keep saying A1451, A whatever. Our program code, you can actually search all the funded projects by program code under the advanced search. And it will show, you have the option also to show different fields. So how much money is spent, what the abstracts, there's just a wealth of detail in which you can find here. Next slide. So this is just opening up the interfaces a little bit more. So you can see there are just a plethora of choices under what results you want to show here, the different fields that you can search for. So when you peruse it, it just, you'll have many, many options. At the bottom, you have in green here, search, and then you will find the next slide. It's a downloadable CSV interface. And so again, depending on what options you choose are different rows for the output data, or excuse me, different columns of output data. And the rows are all the different projects that are in the output. And then just to take note of this on the next slide, that these are live links. So under the project title and the accession number, you can actually click on those and get more detailed information. Next slide. And this is, again, completely unreadable, but just a sense of what kind of detail that you will be able to pull up. So we have the non-technical summary, we have the goals and objectives, and the project methods. So again, this is just a place that I would recommend as a new investigator when you're trying to figure out which program area would be most applicable to you. Maybe there's a few that seem like they could be a good fit. First of all, you can shoot an email to the national program leader who's listed in the RFA and ask their opinion. You can ask for, say, a 30-minute meeting to just discuss ideas with national program leaders, but also do the due diligence and go to Nifidata Gateway and try to search for yourself and see where you fit best with the historic funding that's happened. Next slide.
Okay, thank you, Megan. So with that, we'll start wrapping it up. I do want to just sort of pull your attention to this list of FAQs. I tell you, there's a tremendous amount of information present here. Lots of questions that have been asked, but every time I look at it, I as well learn new answers to questions about the AFRI programs. And I will say that to emphasize what we've been saying all along, the RFA is your roadmap. Always read your RFA, look deeply into it, and then either email or pick up a phone and call your national program leader and then have a focused conversation. I think that's the most effective way to really sort of get the answers to your questions. So I think we'll move on to the next slide, which should be just time for Q&A. And so I've noticed a few questions in the question box, and I think there are a lot of answers that people would like to answer live as well. So Hannah or Susan or Amber, who is managing the questions?
So it'll be me and Susan that are reading out the questions.
I'll start with the first one. I believe Daniel wanted to answer this. It says, what is the best way to reach out to program managers, email or call? My experience is they're not very responsive to emails. And Daniel had said he'd like to answer.
Yeah, I'm very upset that program managers are not answering to emails. Phone right now is a little bit difficult with this being spread all across the country, but we all have email access, and I tried to turn everything around within 48 hours. And so if somebody's having an issue, please let me know as soon as possible.
Could I just add, having come from academia, I thought that I got a lot of emails. It's nothing compared to the number of emails that I get now. So we are very focused on customer service. We absolutely want to answer your questions, but do please forgive us if it slips through the crack, and absolutely don't be afraid to ping us 2, 3 times. We want to answer your questions.
Thank you for, I think that's a very good sort of explanation as to why sometimes your response doesn't come as fast as you would like. And did you have a comment as well?
A small technical note, we adhere to DMARC standards in the federal government, and sometimes that does not play nicely with your university email system. You might try reaching out to a different program officer or one of the staff if you consistently get no answers, or check with your IT department at your university. It's actually critical that we be able to maintain email exchange. This will affect all federal government interactions if you have this problem. So keep an eye out for that.
I would like to add to follow up on what Megan was saying, that we do get a lot of email, and if you do need to reach out to us more than once, for me personally, if you mention that you have already emailed once and this is your second attempt, I'll do my very best to respond to you immediately. So please don't feel that you're pestering. Sometimes we just need a little bit of help to deal with all of the email that we get.
Great. The next question is, can you define bioeconomy?
I have a feeling that's going to fall in my lap again, huh? So bioeconomy is really anything that we can use from our forests, from our grasslands, from our rangelands to help develop new systems, new products, new jobs that will help continue to grow the economy. That's a very vague answer. I will let Dr. Connor try to back me up on that if I failed, but I think that's a pretty good explanation.
No, very good, Dan. You know, I think that covers it. It is broad. It is the standard bioeconomy definition, with the exception of, obviously, we don't cover non-agricultural, you know, sort of definitions in there. So it is meant to be inclusive versus exclusive, but it is primarily focused on non-food systems primarily when we talk about it, although components of it can be used for food and other things. But it includes biofuels as well as the other bio-based type uses and applications and products.
Okay, and then the next question, I think this one's for you, Jim. It's asking about water quality and quantity. Would projects aimed at reducing water utilization by animals in the field or in processing be adequate?
Yeah, so we would welcome a project like that, whether it be looking at water relationships on the farm or in a confined feeding operation. We'd be looking for projects for both of those. Thanks.
Great. Our next question is, could an SBIR grant include ecosystem restoration research?
Yes, it absolutely could. I mean, the key thing here for SBIR is, does it have a business model and a route to market? If you looked across the SBIR portfolio topic areas, you'd see that it pretty much covers the whole span of ag and forestry, as well as rural communities and development. And in that case, there's room for pretty much everything that has a either starting point in ag or ending point in ag, or a way in which a system like ecosystems can actually add value to some end user who's willing to pay for it. Or it could be a county, a municipality, or something like that. So it is business focused, but that would fit into the scope.
Yeah, and I would just add that when Dr. Connor says ag, he's talking about the capital A ag, which includes forestry, because a lot of the times our foresters hear ag and they tune out. Same thing, I think Jim will agree with me with the rangelands people. You know, so we're talking about capital A ag here.
Yeah, and we can include the natural resources complex too, as part of SBIR.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, we're actually going to go back to a question that was answered partially by Olivia. It says, since BNRI's A1414 priority area is new this year, what would be expected in the education and extension sections? Olivia's covered that, but the next part of the question says, what ideas such as development of coursework, industrial workshops provide a meaningful integration with research?
Wow, I'm just getting all the questions today, aren't I? Yes, we've had some really successful bioenergy, bio-based products educational programs in the past that have worked at the collegiate level, they've worked at the elementary school level, they've worked at the high school level. So we're really just looking at how do we get people to acknowledge that there are opportunities out there to develop these new products, to use these new products, bring these new products into their lives to help our natural resource systems.
Great. The next question is, are phase grants only for new investigators? The answer is no, but I'd like an NPL to elaborate.
I'll take it. So no, phase grants can be for people who don't qualify as new investigators. The eligibility for phase grants is either by being in an EPSCoR state, and there's a list of states that qualify as EPSCoR, and it should be noted that the EPSCoR states for USDA are not the same as EPSCoR states for other federal funding agencies. So you want to look at USDA's list. So you can either qualify by being in an EPSCoR state, you can qualify by being a small to mid-sized institution, which is an institution with an enrollment of 17,500 or less. That's total enrollment. Or you can qualify by being a minority serving institution, which is an institution where a minority group or combination of minority groups is more than 50% of the total enrollment. And if you qualify by being either a minority serving institution or a small mid-sized institution, you cannot be one of the 100 most successful institutions. And there's a table in the RFA that says what those are. So, Mark, are you dying to add something to that? See you.
I was just going to add that being in an EPSCoR state, and for all the ones you've mentioned, you have to be at a degree granting institution.
Right.
So those are only for people in degree granting institutions, whereas the new investigator awards are not restricted to individuals at degree granting institutions.
Okay, I think we're ready for the next question. It is, what about qualitative social science work? Are these programs receptive to this kind of work?
I will pipe in that A1451, so the Sustainable Agroecosystems Program, is very receptive. So what we see is collaborations between natural and social sciences often. We even see leads by social sciences. So typically we would get The majority of programs are led by natural scientists, but we can in fact, and do in fact fund some that are led by social scientists, and we love the interdisciplinary collaboration too.
Yeah, you also have the opportunity to infuse social sciences in the water quality and quantity program. Obviously there are water issues that are related to social science, and we certainly would welcome those projects.
Yeah, and I'll just pipe in talking about the bioenergy portfolio. You know, we have a lot of social scientists that work on it. Most of them are economists, but we do have sociologists that have worked on these projects in the past because it's simply trying to get them to buy into this idea of a growing bioeconomy. So yes, we're very accepted.
So the next question goes to Jim Dobrowolski. In terms of the water quality and quantity program, fate and transport of chemicals of environmental concern was mentioned as part of the focus. How applied versus fundamental do the projects need to be? Could you provide some general comments in this regard? For example, would the development of computational tools for predicting the fate and transport of emergent contaminants be a good fit?
It would be a good fit, but remember that we are the USDA, folks, and so we tend to look for projects that have an agricultural or natural resources hook. So keep that in mind, because there are other programs, of course, EPA, Department of Energy, both are of which are looking very carefully at particularly chemicals of emerging concern. And those are related to drinking water situations. So we would be looking for the chemicals that would remain in the water, for example, after waste treatment, but that water would be then used for irrigation. It may be used for irrigation on crops that are eaten fresh, which is going to be a critical part of our portfolio. Thanks.
Okay, and then the next question is, well, what's the percentage of submitted grants that can get funded in the soil, health, and water quantity and quality areas?
Can you go over that one again, Susan? I blanked out on it.
That's okay. They're asking about the percentage of submitted grants that get funded for soil health and water.
Soil health and water, I think soil health was at 20% and water was at 28% in fiscal year 2020.
Great. The next question is, do you have any specific tips for resubmissions of previously unsuccessful proposals? Are program managers permitted to discuss the previous reviews to help provide guidance and interpretation?
Well, folks, we have the expectation that if you're going to resubmit, and we do fund resubmissions quite often, and so it's a good thing to think about resubmitting your area, and it probably will help to be a resubmission. But we have the expectation that you will include a one-page response to previous reviews. And so we will look at that very carefully, and that will become part of the review process.
I'll add that I get the question about resubmissions quite often. There's no prejudice against the resubmission. There's no prejudice against it being resubmitted for the fourth time versus the second time. But I would say that if you are getting consistent not fund responses, reach out to the MPL, have a discussion, but don't do it the month or the week before it's due. Really take a long-term approach and reach out as soon as possible to brainstorm ideas and kind of refocus or try to just get that big picture of where maybe an MPL could help direct you before you get too deep into the details of your proposal.
Yeah, I think Megan makes a good point there is definitely work with the MPL and work with the MPL early and not wait until a month before. We're here to support you. That's our job. You're our stakeholders. And so please reach out to us and we will help as best as possible.
I guess I'd like to add a little bit to that too, with regard to how to approach reviews and panel summary when you have been declined funding. So when you first get those reviews and panel summary, you might want to read them and set them aside for a little bit, and then read them again and think carefully about the comments from the review, and are the concerns things that you can address, in which case, you know, you might want to consider resubmitting, or are they things that it's going to be very difficult to address, in which case you might want to think about picking a different project. So that's a kind of conversation that you could have with the program contact. You don't want to just keep submitting the same proposal that's landing in low priority time after time.
I'll just add also, don't expect that just because you've addressed one year's panel review, that because you've addressed that it will be funded the next year. Each year there's a new panel, and each year there's going to be a new perspective and a new ranking compared to what else is submitted. So it's certainly no guarantee that just because you address the criticisms one year that you'll be funded the next year.
And I'll just add, I agree with everything that's been said, but if you're going to resubmit, you really need to address the previous review in a productive manner. If you're going to be rebutting everything or multiple things, each time you try to rebut something, that's going to make it more difficult to get your proposal through the panel. And if you totally ignore and insist that the panelists don't know what they're talking about and you're right, as occasionally happens, the proposal is likely to fall in the ranking rather than improve. So I learned this the hard way a long time ago, about 37 years ago, from a wise old colleague. And he said, 27 years ago. And he said, Mark, you really should do everything the panel says. And I've seen that over and over again since I've been here 20 years.
Yeah, let me interject as well to add on to that great advice you've gotten from all my colleagues. You know, NIFA picks its panel, and panel's inclusive of new investigators and seasoned investigators. One of the best ways to get a handle on the types of approaches, the types of packages to put together for a successful proposal, and the types of approaches is probably to serve on a panel. So I would encourage you to consider, particularly, you know, if you're building a relationship with your program leader, to reach out and say, hey, you know, I think, you know, I'd like to serve as a peer reviewer if that works out, and just, you know, see where it goes, because that's a good way to learn.
I'd like to add sort of my perspective to that, which is it's helpful to me if you indicate that you want to serve on one of the review panels for one of the programs I'm responsible for. If you send me your CV, So I know what your background is and which panels would be a good fit for you. And also, if you send your CV and you don't get picked to serve on a panel that year, don't give up. Understand that we have to balance a lot of different factors when we're putting a panel together. And we can't have, say, 2 people from one institution. We try to get a variety of people from different parts of the United States. There's a lot of other factors that we need to put together. So don't give up. You know, if you don't get picked one year, you could remind program contact that you're still interested. And another good way is sometimes programs will request ad hoc reviews. And that's a review where you don't serve on the panel, but you submit the review. And that's also a good way to sort of get practice in how to do reviews. So.
Okay, let's go on to the next question. It says for newer programs like A1402, there's only 1 year of past awards available. When can we expect to see the 2020 awards?
Hopefully fairly soon. Yeah, so I will admit that it is probably my fault that we are behind on those. I'm an acting division director as well as having a full program load. And we are not fully staffed since our move to Kansas City. So I am behind, but I will do my best to catch up.
And you know, it's important that you also realize that while we would really, so the awardees know the results pretty soon. However, we aren't always able to publish those as soon as we would like, because we also have to go through a clearance process for press releases and things like that for many programs, maybe not all, but many programs. So sometimes it's a little bit of a lag, and I appreciate the difficulty when it's like the first year of a program, so you can sort of gauge at what types of programs are being funded, but just bear with us.
Next question is there a limit to the number of Copyis in a proposal or that a project could have?
No, there's no limit to the number of Copyis, and we call them CoPDs, project directors. There's no limit, but remember that you're only getting a certain amount of money to do the whole project. And, you know, you have to balance out the amount of CoPDs that you have that you're committing money to, and the ability for you to actually do the work and have the number of students and graduate students and postdocs as support personnel. So keep that in mind.
Okay, and the next question, how soon after submissions are panels typically?
Okay, I'll take that one too. It does depend on the program, and it also depends on, well, most of the national program leaders have responsibility for multiple programs, not just competitive programs, but we have responsibility for things like capacity funds and multi-state research projects, and we're juggling a lot of different sort of deadlines and timelines. And so I would say that an average amount of time between a submission deadline and a panel meeting is probably somewhere around a couple of months. You know, please feel free to jump in and other folks on this and you know, challenge me, but I would say that that's approximately correct. Olivia, have you got more information?
So The general rule of thumb that we give to applicants is that from application deadline, and then you include both the panel review process and award processing, it can take about 6 months. So if your question is in relation to what your requested project start date should be, generally I suggest not having your requested start date be any earlier than 6 months after the deadline. The actual dates of panels are kept confidential. However, after you submit your application, you should receive, and also after the application deadline, programs generally send out a confirmation of receipt of your application, and they will include a date by which you should hear back from them about the results of the peer review.
Great. The next question is, can you serve on a review panel for one specific priority area if you submit to another priority area within BNRI for the same funding cycle?
Yes, you can. So we would be glad to have you do that, in fact. So if you want to be a panelist in one program and submit to one of the other BNRI programs, that would be great. You just can't submit to the same program that you're going to be serving on the panel, for sure.
Okay, and then the next one, do you decide the panel membership based on the project proposal submitted, or is it decided before?
I'll take it. So I think it's a combination of the two. I can see maybe some other folks want to jump in as well, but for a program that has been offered for multiple years, we often know sort of the kinds of reviewers that we're going to need for that program. So we're likely to line up a few of them before the proposals come in. And then we're going to look at the topics of the proposals and figure out what other kinds of expertise we need to make sure that all of the proposals submitted to the program get a full and fair review. So we'll start before, but we won't finish until after.
Yeah, and I'll just add, occasionally we'll have that mixed model, but occasionally we have to add ad hoc reviewers, as Ann mentioned earlier. And that's how we will round out our expertise if for some reason, it's sort of a unique approach or unique, experimental, or extension sort of proposal that you're putting in or education, et cetera, then we'll reach out to ad hocs.
Okay. It looks like the last question that we have is, do the new investigators seed proposals for programs that only take integrated projects, such as the Sustainable Bioeconomy through Bio-Based Products program, also have to include extension and/or education? What is expected of seed proposals for these integrated projects on the extension and education side? So it sounds like for seed projects, for programs that require integrated projects, how much extension and or education is needed?
That's the question that I got tripped up on a previous session. I know. So
now you can answer it, Ann.
What's it? You want me to answer it?
No, I'm going to let you. I was going to say you answer it, Ann.
All right, I'll answer it, and then you can tell me if I'm wrong. So for an integrated program, say research and education or research and extension, a seed grant can also be integrated. If it's like a research only program, then the seed grants should be research only. You want to complete my answer, Mark?
Yeah, I was going to say, but for an integrated program, they seed grants do not have to be integrated. So they can be integrated, but they can be single function, and the functions have to be the same as what's being asked for. One of whatever functions being proposed has to be one of those functions that are invited or solicited in that program. So if it's integrated research and extension, a seed grant could be integrated, or it could be research only, or it could be extension only. But it could not be education, because education is not invited in that program.
Okay, thank you guys. And for the Inquirer, if you need to follow up, feel free to just hop back in the chat for any clarifying questions.
We have a couple more questions. There's one that says, is it too late to request serving as a panel reviewer for this year?
No, please feel free to shoot us your CV and pick one of us. If you did not pick the right program, in our opinion, we'll forward it to the right national program leader, but we really appreciate any volunteers for this.
Okay, the next question is, many of us do site-based research. Do you see multi-state investigations of the same crop or production system do better in review than single site or state?
You're going to make me ask this one.
I can do it, Daniel. It's, you know, okay. If you spread your proposed work over 3 states, and those 3 states, that particular issue is a big problem. Certainly the scope of that is going to be a positive piece. But again, these are foundational programs. And so there's not a tremendous amount of money to do really a very large regionally scoped project. And so, you know, carefully consider that. And the focus is write the best proposal that you can to answer the issue that you're addressing.
And I'll say, as previously a new investigator, bigger isn't necessarily better. Again, we know that it's limited money. We know that overhead comes out of this. If you propose more than you can actually achieve, given the amount of money, that'll actually be detrimental to your proposal. So be realistic about what you can do with the amount of money, and that will fit the scope of what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, and I'll just chime in and finish this off. I had a discussion yesterday with the Forest Service on a very similar question. And if you can find an answer for a problem in your region, that's wonderful. If you can then figure out how to take that conclusion and spread it out regionality, it's much better.
I will add one thing to what Megan was saying, which is that I think the single most common mistake for new investigators is to propose too much.
Okay, I'm going to go on to the next question. So this one's kind of relating a bit to COVID and delays that we had, and also from the move. But it said that one of the programs that was mentioned today had delays in the results from the 2019, and the results came out around the same time as the 2020 deadline. This limited the number of fixes that could be done before there was a resubmission. They said with the 5-year limit on career track, it would be great to know the results sooner. Is there any plans to relax the 5-year limit, at least for the programs that were affected by this?
So we have granted no-cost extensions to folks that were that have suffered delays because of the COVID-19 pandemic. In particular, you know, some of the awards that we have provided to folks required field work. They required the hiring of students and postdocs and all kinds of different folks. And in a lot of cases, those were either delayed or stopped. The universities or the colleges were closed. And in those situations, we were flexible relative to no-cost extensions.
So the question, I believe, is actually asking about the 5 years in a career track position. Unfortunately, the 5-year limit for the career track position is put into congressional language. Basically, it's part of the Farm Bill. And currently, we have not had any additional legislation that provides further flexibility in that 5-year limit for new investigators.
Okay, the next question is, when do you expect BRDI grants to be announced? Are you planning panel reviews, virtual or face-to-face in 2021?
All right, Dr. Connor, you can take this one or I can take it. Currently, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Currently, BRDI is not funded by Congress. So that is a legislation that is sitting on a shelf that has no funding. So the answer to that would be, your guess is as good as mine.
And I suspect in general, our panel reviews are going to be virtual this year.
Yeah, you know, should all of a sudden Brdi show up with, you know, the 20 or 40 million dollars that he used to have, and I can fund a panel, yes, it'll be virtual. But right now that program is zeroed out.
Right. And that's a good point. I'm glad you saw the end of that, Megan. Just so you know, all of our panels now are virtual. We will use the guidance of USDA as well as overall administration to make decisions about when we begin to open up. But we will exercise all caution and will likely be pretty conservative about the situation to protect people's health before we have live panels.
Could I add a thought about that 5-year extension and the COVID? For the phase money, for new investigators, there's not really a specific legislatively set aside pot of money. You do get coded as a new investigator, but I would say there isn't a vast advantage to being a new investigator. So I think, like, don't be super disappointed that we're not granting an extension because of this COVID year. It's not the same as the advantage that you get from being a strengthening grant from the minority serving institution, the EPSCoR, and the small institutions where there is a specific set aside pot of money for that.
That said, 2021 is the first year for the new investigator seed grants, and that may actually be a pretty good advantage.
Okay. Does that end our questions, Susan and Hannah?
Yep, there aren't any more questions that I see in the chat, so.
Okay. Well, in that case, again, we want to thank you for dialing in. You know, we hope that we've been informative. We hope at least that we've given you a little bit of more sense of who to contact and when you contact who you're going to be talking to. We truly hope as well that we've made your month a little brighter. If not your month, maybe your week a little brighter. And if not your week, we certainly hope we made your Thursday evening a little bit better. We look forward to your applications and follow-up conversations with us, and we wish you happy innovations and the best of health. Thank you very much. This concludes the New Investigator webinar series for NIFA, and all take care. Goodbye.